Hello, this is our Bethel Park Live Well speaker series. I'm the special host today, Alan Levine, the talking machine, and we have Mike Fertig here. Please tell us what you're going to talk about.
Thank you, Al. Today we're going to talk about getting financially prepared. There are a few things that are as important as being financially prepared. It's not especially fun to talk about and to plan for, but it is awfully important, starting as young as possible, hopefully, and continuing through your working years, getting prepared for retirement, and then living well in retirement. So we're going to talk about lots of important financial considerations, beginning with things like savings, right? And then we'll talk about income and taxation. We'll spend a little time talking about expenses and inflation. We'll talk about prudent investment practices, and then we'll talk about withdrawal strategies. You know, when you've done all the work to put this all together, how are you eventually going to take and receive that income later on? So we're going to walk through several of the more critical aspects of kind of overall financial planning, and I'll probably use the term retirement plan throughout. Just know when I say retirement plan, I'm talking in a broader sense, that we're just talking about the plan that you have in place for today and into the future. And if some of you are out there saying, well, I don't really have much of a plan in place, I would say welcome to the club, because most people don't yet, or at least they don't do it soon enough. But our hope today is that we kind of start you on the path to getting your financial future secure and in place.
Sounds like a great plan.
Excellent. Let's get started with a little bit about, savings. And maybe before I talk about savings, let me just talk a little bit about debt, because debt is one of those things that can kind of hinder our overall savings plan. There are broadly just kind of two types of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt, right? Good debt is the type of thing that allows us to get the kind of better long-term financial productivity. Examples would include, buying a home versus renting, or buying a vehicle to get to school or to work, or buying tools or equipment for a job. That's the good kind of debt that we ought to be accumulating. Bad debt is all of the non-durable consumer items that are maybe a little more fun to buy, but if we're not paying off those balances on a regular basis, we're accumulating debt, and that's going to hinder our ability to save for the future.
Yes, I wanted to add something. Something that helped me in my life when I was young is, on a simple term, they go, you don't want to buy wasting assets. And like, I bought a building before my 21st birthday because I saved up enough money to do that. And so I understood that. And buying a car, they depreciate when you leave the lot.
Yes.
Like, it might be great and it's fancy, and if you're a guy, the girls like it. If you're a girl, the guys like it. So you get distracted. What I like is you're putting out a plan so we can focus, because actually this is pretty simple.
It is really simple stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this stuff. It's just the act of doing it. And the ability to start saving. When you're starting out, you've got lots of responsibilities, bills, and you've got to make sure that those are paid. You just want to stay away from getting into the habit of amassing debt that spirals out of control and then impedes your ability to start saving. Because the sooner we can start saving, the better off we'll be. And Al can attest to the fact that he started very early in life, allowed him to get to retirement in a very good place, and then live the way you want to live. When we talk about savings, there are, I'm going to call them different buckets that you can utilize. And we'll talk about three broad buckets of money. There's the after-tax bucket. That would include personal portfolios, bank accounts, mutual fund accounts, stocks, bonds, etc. Then you have your pre-tax bucket. That would be an IRA, or perhaps a company-sponsored retirement plan. If you're self-employed, a self-employed retirement plan. Money inside of those accounts will grow tax-deferred. you'll pay taxes when you pull the money back out. The final bucket I'll discuss is I'm going to call it the Roth bucket, right? You hear about the Roth IRA,
I'm
Roth
interested,
conversions.
yes.
This is a bucket that is potentially tax-free. Certain requirements that you have to meet, but with a Roth account, you never get a deduction on any money that goes into it, but it grows tax deferred, and when it comes out, you don't pay any tax on it. So those are the three buckets we'll talk about, and people will often ask, well, which one should I be saving into? And my answer is yes. And they say, what do you mean yes? All three. Put all three, because then you've got options as you begin to draw money down the road. But we're going to talk about each of those buckets kind of as we move through today. Anyone who has considered or even thought about retirement knows that what you save and how much you save is very, very important. Al talked before about the 10% that he was saving, or his goal. We as a country are falling short of that. If everyone could save 10% of their income, they would be much, much better off when they get to retirement age. But the sad fact is, most people are falling well below that 10% number. It is a very low single digit. And many people don't have the ability to save anything at all until much later in life, and then you're kind of playing catch up, which is a tough way to go.
No, I understand that exactly, because you're talking about when somebody starts a career. And, I was ready to roll, unlike today, at 18 years old. I had money built up, did that, got hired, at the newspapers, Pittsburgh Press, one of the best jobs ever in a production department. And I found out as I was making more money, I was spending more money. So I talked to a couple guys with wisdom. They said buy savings bonds and put $100 a week away or more and don't use it. And I did things like that. So that's how I bought the building before my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
And friends of mine had cars, were out partying and everything else. They go, how are you doing that? So Mike's giving you the plan. I love the buckets, because guess what? You need a nice solid bucket to carry all that money that you're going to make.
And the buckets of money we're going to refer back to. I'm going to take a little diversion here and talk for a minute about taxation, because taxes are, first of all, what are the two things that are guaranteed in life? Death and taxes. So taxes aren't going away, right? We have to be cognizant of taxes.
Yes.
When we're working, we, of course, are paying taxes at the federal level, the state level, the local level, and FICA. While you're working, you're paying tax. In retirement, you are still going to pay tax, and Social Security is going to be taxable. Now, it depends on your income. I won't bore you with the details of that. For most people, you're going to pay tax on 50%, at least half of your Social Security. Other folks who are in a higher bracket are going to pay perhaps 85% of your Social Security is going to become taxable. When we do retire and you start to draw money from these different buckets, just know that with the retirement accounts that you put away tax deferred, those are now going to be taxable at the federal level, right? Here in Pennsylvania,
And that means lower.
That means lower.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. That's the whole concept is, while you're working, you are presumably in a higher bracket. You're putting money away and getting a break at that higher bracket.
Sure.
You retire, now you're in a hopefully lower bracket and you're paying less tax.
Hence, with what Mike's talking about, you must prepare.
That's exactly right. That's the whole idea.
That's the nut you need to crack.
That's exactly
Prepare.
it. Yes.
I'm a simple man here.
Yes, and someone told me, an acronym once was KISS, which I'm sure you know what that means,
Keep
right?
it simple, stupid.
That's it. That's all we're
practice it. Now I say just keep it simple, because I've had younger people get mad at me. You're
Sure.
so nice. Why are you calling me stupid?
Yeah.
I go, it's a metaphor.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm not educated. Glad we could share that.
Yes. That last little bucket of money that I talked about was the Roth. And the Roth bucket is important because when you take money out of the Roth eventually, it comes out tax-free. So you can see now, if you have all three of those buckets, you've got a taxable bucket, that's our personal money. We've got a tax-deferred bucket, that's our IRA and company retirement plan money. Then we have the Roth bucket, which is tax-free. If we now need to make some adjustments and say, hey, this year my income is higher than usual. Okay, I don't want to take any more from my tax-deferred bucket because that's just going to add more tax on top of. But I need some extra cash, I'm going to maybe take it from my Roth bucket. So those are the strategies that you can start to play with if you've got the plan in place up front.
And the key thing is, if you have the plan in place, and it's needed, no matter whether it's a small amount or not, like they came out with IRAs, and I figured I'll put $100. Then I put the maximum amount I could, because I figured, look what I'm saving.
Yes. And you know, when I got into the investment business, which was almost 30 years ago now.
You don't look it.
Thank you. My wife will like that.
I'm sure she does.
The amount that you were able to put into an IRA, and I forget exactly, but I think it was like $500 maximum.
Yeah.
They have fortunately and correctly increased your ability to put more away. This year it's $6,000. If you're over age 50, you can put $7,000 away.
No, and I remember the beginning. So, you know, those are things that you need to do. I took advantage and followed your plan with other people that gave me that wisdom.
Yep.
It takes others to help guide us. Guess what? You can't do this on your own.
And why should you? And that's what I tell people all the time. You know, you go do what you do best, and I'm going to go to the
Grab
dentist.
that pile.
Yes. I'll go to the dentist when I need my teeth worked on. I'll go to the doctor. I'm not going to try to do all of this stuff on my own.
Nor do you need to.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's exactly
and
right.
people get distracted by that. Like, I have tunnel vision. We're talking finances.
Yes. Yes.
And stay that way. His buckets mean something, and I practice that.
Good.
So I'll co-sign a lot of what you're saying.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. Well, we'll talk about the slide that you're looking at now. It says that success is not a guarantee. You know, we're born in what I believe is the greatest country on the planet, but just because we're born here or that we live here doesn't mean that we are guaranteed to have success. If you look at some of the median annual income for Americans over the age of 65, you can see for men, it's a little more than $36,000 per year. For women, a little more than $21,000 per year. Families, around $70,000. We have to ask ourselves, is that going to be enough to allow us to live the way we want to live and be comfortable both before retirement and after retirement? And I'll add that we are living longer, healthier lives, so we need to be prepared for a much longer retirement than folks who came before us did.
Great advice.
One of the key components for many people's retirement involves Social Security. So we've talked a little bit about it. You're looking at a slide now that shows the role that Social Security might play in your financial future. And you can see the average Social Security benefit, in this case for men, was about $1,700 a month, or $20,000 per year. For women, about $1,300 a month, a little more than $16,000 per year. Can you look at that and say, I can rely on Social Security alone to fund my retirement? You've heard the expression, it's not what you earn, but what you do with what you earn. And
Amen. Amen.
That's what this is all about. I've had clients who had a modest income for most of their working years. They were able to put away enough money to retire. They were able to educate their kids, because they had the plan in place. I've had other clients who had pretty significant incomes, and they were going to fail miserably in retirement because they weren't saving.
Well, like I learned at a young age, as income went up, your spending goes up to your income. It's unbelievable, whether it's a few thousand or thousands.
Yes.
And I heard many people talk to me over the years about that.
I've told people,
Great points.
anytime you get an increase in pay, the first thing that you want to do is go spend it on something and buy something fun. what you should do is immediately increase your savings. And that way it's almost like, hey, I don't miss it because it was never in
a key thing that a smart financial guy told me, pay yourself first. And I found out just putting $100 away, a couple hundred away, guess what? In a year, that adds up.
And if you do that, again, if you can start, I have 2 kids in their 20s, and I preach, start putting it away now.
Yeah.
Even $50, $100 a month. By the time you get into your 60s, the magic of compounding, as we call it.
Ben Franklin talked about it.
Absolutely.
A penny a day.
It is going to be worth so much, and it's such an easy thing to do once you start doing it. But getting in the habit is the harder part.
No, and that's it. You know, it only takes 30 days to create a habit.
That's exactly
You
right.
can do it.
You can do it, yes. So, we're going to talk more about Social Security in a bit, but we're also going to talk about knowing your top marginal tax bracket. I mean, knowing your tax bracket is important, but your top bracket, you know, and we live in a country where oftentimes people think that if I earn $1 extra that puts me up into the next bracket, my whole income is going to get sucked up into that bracket. No, it's staged. So we pay taxes in
Incremental.
And if you understand where you are in your tax brackets, know that when we talk about retirement accounts, whether it's a company-sponsored plan or an IRA account, when you're making those contributions, you're making those in your top tax bracket. So essentially, the government is giving you a tax-free loan at your top bracket for all the years that you keep that money in that retirement vehicle. So not knowing where you stand in taxes is a disadvantage. Knowing where you are and being able to make decisions in that top bracket is even better. Also, your income strategy. You know, we want you to start early and save often, but basically the most common goal that we share as Americans after health is number 1, retirement security is number 2. We have to have a plan in place to understand where our income is going to come from. And if we don't know until it's too late, there's not a whole lot that we can do about it. If we know sooner, we can impact the amount that we're saving. So maybe we can increase how much we're saving. Maybe we can make better decisions that are more tax efficient. Maybe we can even impact the rate of return. A lot of people don't know what rate of return they're earning on the investment accounts that they have. Knowing what that is and whether or not that's going to allow us to get to where we want to go is very important. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Hopefully you do this sooner. If you're waiting until it's a little bit too late, you might be in a position where you say, well, I wanted to retire at this age. I'm not going to make it. I've got to extend my career. I mean, it's, you know, years ago there were commercials, for fast food restaurants, and they were showing older individuals working it. It was not no coincidence.
Right.
People found out too late that, hey, I can't make it work on what I've got saved, so I have to go do something part-time to make ends meet. You don't want to be in that position, and again, the sooner you start, the better off you'll be, but getting the plan in place allows you to know what it is you're trying to accomplish, what's getting in the way, and what you need to do to adjust along
Mike,
the way.
I had a question for you.
Sure.
We're talking about younger. You know, I was at an extreme starting at 9 and have paper route and things like that. Now with college being so much involved in people's lives and the debt that's created, look at how college tuition's increased astronomically. You know, to me, it's not a good thing.
Yep.
So what are you looking for after they graduate college? Like you're talking early 20s.
Yes.
To get started, which gives you a 40-year period. Let me explain that you have 40 years is what he's telling you to save. So think about what a simple $100 a month would do. And I'm kicking off where you're going to go.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's where, you know, the average person, hey, I got a vacation coming up in the spring. I don't want to hear all this. Here's why you need to listen.
Yes. And that is, it's probably too much for most people. There are the rare exceptions, like Al over here, who start very, very young. But for most people, once you've gone through school, which I agree with you is incredibly expensive.
Yes.
Another reason that for the parents out there, I don't have the statistics in my head, but I used to teach a class where I would say, if you have a child born today, here's how many paychecks you have until he or she enters college.
Great class.
So yeah, so think about how much of each of those paychecks you better put away if you want to save for an education. And the point to it is, it's going to happen awfully quickly. And kids, you know, they grow up fast and they're in college before you know it.
You can't stop age. It's like a river.
The education is really expensive. Starting to fund that as soon as possible is real important. And again, you don't have to put away tens of thousands of dollars at once. You can put away $25, $50, $100 a month. And by the time the child gets to school age, you will have a good bit of that education funded. Then, as you go through school, you land your first job, that is the right opportunity to then start practicing some of these principles and say, hey, I heard somebody say once you ought to take 10% of what you make and put it away. And if you can do that into a company-sponsored retirement plan, you might even get the advantage where there's an employer matching contribution. So you're putting away 10, maybe they're matching 3, 4, 5 of that. That's, you know, free money. It's money that you otherwise wouldn't have had, but that's how you can really start to build and create wealth.
Being unusual, you made me think of a story. My daughter graduated Penn State, 3 degrees, got a job, and she said, Dad, what do I do with a 401k? I go, I'm aware of defined benefit plans, which are antiques. So I didn't have to worry about it. I go, do they have a match? And she said, yes, they do. I said, do they have a max? She goes, yes, they do. I go, max out, and you'll thank me. She goes, Dad, really? And she was surprised. And she worked 5 years for a company. They got bought out, and it got terrible, and she had to leave. She goes, Dad, I got over $40,000 because of you. So that's a true story.
Yeah, and that's a great story. And that, starting early.
Professor, I thought I could help you.
I love it. That maxing out is terrific. The sooner you can do it, the better. But I tell folks that at the very least, and this is where being aware of what opportunities you have, at the very least, you ought to contribute enough to any retirement plan where there is a match that you're at least taking advantage of the full match.
Right, and I'll just share this. When they first came out, a lot of companies would double, and a lot don't anymore. So that's why I always said do the match. But you can actually put extra to do it. So I don't want to limit you, and I hate to pigeonhole somebody.
Yeah.
So I just say that you can do more. But her just doing that in 5 years, look at the chunk she was able to start. Well, you'll get into IRAs.
Yes.
And she was able to put it in a self-directed IRA.
Yep.
And I taught her about investing and things like that, and money managers. So you're going to cover that. But I'm just saying real life with what I've done.
Yeah.
And trying to do the right thing. Hey, we want our children to do well.
Yes.
We want us to do well so we're not miserable in retirement.
Absolutely. Yeah, and retirement
plans. And thank you for letting me add that.
Please, yeah. Retirement plans have changed over time. Al mentioned what used to be kind of the standard, which was a defined benefit plan.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, and you work for a company for X number of years, you retired, and they would give you a payment for the rest of your life. Today's retirement plan is what's known as a defined contribution plan.
Yes.
Which means you contribute, hopefully the employer contributes some too, but it's I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist at all, but the defined benefit style is
They're like the dinosaur,
They are.
And they're like horse traveling.
Yes.
And they're like newspapers since they're dying.
Yes. Yeah. So you don't see them, but
if you can get one, sign up.
Absolutely. Sign up. Probably not going to see it, but you have plenty of opportunity, most likely. And again, even if you're self-employed, there are plenty of self-employed plans that you can establish
The old
that allow
SEP.
you to. The old SEP, self-employed person's plan, lets you put away pretty much as you could if you were employed.
No, they're great
somewhere else.
plans.
Great plans. And even more, there's SEPs, there's simples, there's single Ks
They
now.
got
so
acronyms for everything.
I'm telling you, you can find a plan that's right for you, whether you have 1 employee, 10 employees, or 10,000 employees.
Contact Mike. Oh, sorry.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the resources that will be there to kind of help provide for a secure retirement. You know, we talked a little bit about Social Security. We're going to talk more about that. There's the company-sponsored plan that Al and I were just chatting a little bit about.
Yes.
Individual retirement accounts, that would include the old traditional IRA, the Roth IRA, and then, of course, a personal portfolio, which is basically everything else. So when we talk about Social Security, and I want people to really hear this, because Social Security is in the news so much, and there are probably more than 2 camps, but the 2 camps that I hear from most often are the people that think Social Security is going to go away tomorrow. The other camp is Social Security is never going away. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I don't think Social Security is going away, but I think the way that we receive benefits will change, and you can see that. Congress is constantly looking at what to do about Social Security. It is a program in transition. And the reason it's in transition is when we first had Social Security, you know, back in the 1950s, there were over 16 workers for every 1 retired person, right? So you had 16 people supporting every 1 retiree. Fast forward to 2010, and that changed to about 3 to 1. 3 workers supporting every 1 retired person. Looking forward to the year 2035, there's going to be a little more than 2 people supporting every 1 retired person. So Social Security cannot continue in the same format that it was once created for. The reason for that is twofold. We're living longer and we're having less kids. So you put those together and you see it can't continue the same way.
I got to interrupt you on one thing. There's actually a third thing that happened. Social Security was just supposed to be your own money, and Lyndon Johnson, for the Great Society and everything, started tapping into it. And in my opinion, being educated on that, if they didn't tap into it, we'd have trillions of dollars there. So that's why Mike brings up the 16 to 1, 3 to 1, and 2 to 1. I have a solution for that. They have a cap on Social Security at about 160,000. When I was in the 70s, it went from 12,000, 15, 18, 20, 30, up to 60-some thousand. And you need 35 years of your top level of Social Security. I'm sure you were going to cover it, but
No,
since
that's
I
perfect.
am, the top 35 years. And my last 10 years, we made a lot more income, and that helped boost me up with I beat the average of what you're doing, but I was unusual, and I'll share this to all of you. In my 20s, I got on pension committees and other things, and I wanted to always get my Social Security at 62, no matter the penalty. And I wanted my pensions at 62. And you might go, Al, why? You seem smart. I go, it's all my money. It's not an entitlement. And I'll repeat it again. It's not an entitlement. And I ended up having actuarial accountants figure out if you get your money at 62, it would take, now I heard it's 19 years, but 18 years it would affect you. And I always thought, I don't know if I'll live to be 80. So that tied into it. And when I was 62, I took it with my penalties and pensions also.
Yep.
And I have friends of this day, my age, haven't taken it because they go, I want to get the higher amount. And I'll just share this. I've gotten 3/4 of what I paid into it in 4 years. So by 7 years, I've got all my money out. So in my simple mind, I've maximized my income and reap Social Security. Now, will it help me to live? No, I got other assets and things like that. And that's what we're covering. The personal plan is what I had to have growing up because we didn't have all those options. But I just wanted to share that out because I know you can cover it, and you're trying to tell them there will be changes.
Yes.
We're just not sure how drastic they'll be. And thanks for letting me put my input, because you can see I'm deep into this.
And it's perfect because this is the type of discussion that we have with folks every day. And the question comes up almost on a daily basis, when should I take my Social Security? People need to understand that first of all, there are so many rules around Social Security that you really have to understand. Just some of the basic rules around it. You can begin taking it, as Al mentioned, as early as 62, or you can delay it as late as age 70. I mean, you could delay it later, but there's no benefit beyond delaying it past 70.
You want to take it by 70, and I know friends of mine that's their goal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've talked to plenty of people, and I've heard the same thing. The answer to the question, when should I take it, is it's really a very individualized and personal answer.
And it can be variable.
Absolutely. Yeah, because someone might continue to work and they say, hey, I'm not going to retire until 65 or 66. Fine. If you take Social Security at 62 and you're still working, you've got to watch out for the tax. And there's even confiscation if you earn over a certain amount.
Yeah.
Once you reach what they call full retirement age, which for most people now is 66, but it's increasing.
I think it goes up to 67.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mine would have been 66 in 4 months.
You're right. And
They
then
burn it in my head.
Yes. Yes.
And I said, I'm beating it. But no, those things happen. And then you're allowed to earn about $17,000 or something before it's affected. Then here's the egregious part. They take $1 out of $2
back
off of your Social Security. So again, if you don't have Mike's plan, you have trouble.
Yeah, because at that point, without the plan, it's just kind of guesswork, and you're leaving it to pure dumb luck. And maybe you'll do it right, maybe you won't, but why take the risk?
And then I wanted to add one other thing into it. The other thing you got to see is how your health is as you get older. A lot of people in America do not take care of themselves. So now if you're 62 and you got arthritis, knee replacements, hip replacements, other health issues, can you work to 70 to maximize?
Right.
Can you work to 63? Or can you barely make it to 62? And I can understand why you're being asked that all the time, because look what they're bringing to the table.
Correct. Yeah, and getting the plan in place, understanding, hey, if I take it at this age, here's what it looks like. That there's a big incentive offered by Social Security to delay it from full retirement age to 70.
Hence the penalties.
That's correct.
And the other thing is, you have to remember, and people miss this point, your income will stay the same because all they have is the COLA, the cost of living increase, which this year it's going up because we never had inflation since the 80s like this, which is a shock to all of you that you thought 3% mortgages are the norm.
Yes.
They were rare. Now they're at 6%. There's panic in the streets.
Yep.
But yeah, to get an 8%, 8.7% increase is tremendous. So your increases are usually 2 or 3% to get geekish.
Yes.
And I knew you wouldn't dispute that because it's reality.
It is.
And think about that. If you do take the early retirement and you're only going to get 2%, 3% raise, you're not going to make much on that.
That's right.
So if you don't have the buckets there and the other assets, whether it's personal IRA or Roth, Roth is one of the best because guess what? How do you spell no taxes?
Yeah.
Right?
That's absolutely
I'm a
exactly
fan.
Right. Yes, yes. Yeah, and as we consider whether or not to take Social Security at this age, at that age, really it boils down to what Al just said. What does your plan call for? And I have people who, regularly tell me, well, I'm going to live to 100, so I'm waiting till 70. Okay. Sometimes I'll say, how much do you think you'll be able to do with that money when you're 95, 96, 97? Other people say, I'm going to take it as soon as I can get it because I want to be able to use it, enjoy it, etc. And you mentioned before the 19 years, the break even is right there in your mid-ish, early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
So if you live to 82, 83, you will have collected the same amount from Social Security regardless of when you started.
Right.
So that's
Right.
that's what people I think sometimes fail to see, and it's just
they don't.
They see the bigger number and say, I want the bigger number.
No, they don't. They don't think that, and they always think more is better.
Sure.
And you do have to watch it, and you're giving good guidance. And thank you for letting me put some input, because I've lived through it. I have scars with it, and have had good and bad years. So I mean, that's part of life.
It is.
But when you get to be this age, what do you want to do, and how can you do it?
Correct. Yeah, and you mentioned one other really important topic that we're actually coincidentally, and Al didn't see this in advance, so he didn't know this, but we're going to talk about inflation, which he just mentioned. Neither one of us is here to tell you what the future holds for Social Security, but we will tell you that you shouldn't count on Social Security alone to provide you with the income that you're going to need throughout the rest of your life. When you have to consider the kinds of expenses that you have now, but also the expenses that you're going to have throughout the rest of your life, the cost of our needs and interests inflate as we age. And in many cases, they are even more inflation sensitive as we get older.
Great point.
Right?
And we're living it because nobody in the last 20 years has seen inflation like this.
And that's, I'm actually going to bring up the next slide.
I'm waiting excitedly.
Yeah, the next slide is all about inflation. And I know when you hear the word inflation, you kind of intrinsically understand what inflation means. But I think a lot of times when you hear inflation, you think of the big, scary, double-digit type inflation.
I lived through it.
You lived through it. We have some pretty scary inflation going on right now. And it's one of the reasons that, Social Security is going to increase by 8.7%. 8.7.
And to me, they've always underestimated inflation. And you being a financial guy, it's there. And it's like, no offense to cancer people, but it's like a cancer on your money.
Yes.
And most people don't even think about it, let alone live to plan it.
They don't. People think that, I'll only worry about inflation when it's 8, 9, 10, 12%. No, you need to, as this slide illustrates, this has inflation data going back to the 20s.
Give us some numbers, please.
Yeah. If we look at the last 100 years, inflation has averaged somewhere between 3 and 4%.
Sure.
So when we run projections and look into the future, we're going to use an inflation factor somewhere in that 3 to 4% range. That is what we need to be concerned with, because
coming attraction, when you see what it does to your money, 4% a year for 10 years. I'm sure you got info on that.
Yes.
Sorry to
yes.
Give it up, but I understand by living through it. My cheapest mortgage when I got my first home in 1981 was Mellon Bank at 12.25%. 12.25%. Right. So my mouth is watering with 6%.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And human nature, I think, is to believe that whatever is happening right now is going to happen for the rest of my life, right? But it's not. Things change. You made the point before that, hey, what will inflation do to my portfolio?
Yes.
You're looking at a slide now that shows, an example of a 5% rate of return. And I used 5 on purpose because when you hear 5%, you think, hey, that's a nice, safe type rate of return. But when we factor in taxes and inflation, you can see your 5% rate of return is now reduced to less than 1. Right? So now you're earning 0.8% on your money. Is that going to be enough to allow you to achieve what you want to achieve, or do you need to strive for a higher rate of return. We'll talk a little bit about just some prudent investment practices. We'll talk about some of the textbook principles. And I'm not going to go into great detail. I just want you to understand that some of the things that you ought to be implementing as you start to put together a portfolio, there are really 4 basic principles. It's time, not timing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Nobody can time the market. At least I haven't met the person who can. Time, balance, and I'll explain that, diversification, and asset allocation. Those are kind of the 4 keys that everyone ought to be utilizing
Write those
in a
down.
portfolio. Write them down, mark them down, read more about them. But time, all I mean by time is it's the time that you have in the markets that's important. People, and this year is a really good example because people think, well, if I have some money to invest, is now the right time to do it because I see the market is really hectic and it's volatile.
Yeah, it's been down, it's been up.
And from one day to the
Monthly,
next, it
yeah.
can be, a big swing.
Yeah.
The studies have been done, and really and truly, the time that you enter the actual market is pretty insignificant in terms of what your eventual return is.
That makes sense.
As long as you have a reasonable time period, you really shouldn't worry so much about when you're putting money in. Best course of action is to always be adding money. So going back to the retirement plans,
Yeah.
a lot of you are doing those and you're contributing each and every month. That's perfect. You are just kind of by default utilizing something called dollar cost averaging.
Yeah.
Which means I'm putting in the same amount every month, and by
I
the end of
learned
the
that,
year,
and I kept to it. We were getting paid weekly. So mine were all weekly savings, and it's amazing what happens in 6 months.
right? Yeah. And you don't have to worry about, did I get in at the right time? Because when you do it consistently, at the end of the year, you've got the best average cost basis that you could achieve. So just to wrap up asset allocation, all that it sounds fancy, and the
Yeah.
people who did the work on asset allocation, they won Nobel Prizes. So it's good stuff.
With good reason.
With good reason, because it works. Asset allocation is an attempt to contain volatility risk and engineer a return that is in keeping with your investment objective.
Which is your plan.
And that's your plan. And
Yeah.
it's, you want to,
See, I listened to you.
you did, see, Al pays attention. You avoid over-concentration in any one particular area or investment sector or industry, and you dampen down volatility by avoiding correlation, which is things that move in the same direction,
Yeah.
and utilize covariance, which is
Whoa.
things that move in the other direction. right?
Understand.
So
You don't hear that often.
yeah, they're fancy words, but it's such a simple concept that you want to own things that don't all move in the same direction at the same time. You want to own things that move in opposite directions. When
Yeah.
one is up, the other is down, or maybe not up as much.
Exactly.
If you want way too much risk, you're going to over-concentrate in one area. And that is going to be great when things are good, but it's going to be terrible when things are bad.
Yeah, they used to always say high risk, high reward.
We'll finish up asset allocation, because once you know what your asset allocation should be, and we're talking about how much should you have in stocks, how much in bonds, then you've got to fill all of those different categories. And how do you fill them? Well, you can do your research, you can get some professional guidance, and understand that there are so many different investment options available. You've got to be able to weed those down to some degree. You're looking at a slide right now that shows a little bit more on asset allocation, and it just shows year in and year out all of these different asset categories, whether it's large company stocks, small company stocks, international stocks, bonds, cash.
Do you even throw in gold stocks and
You
things
throw-
like
absolutely.
that?
Throw
'Cause
in
that
gold and
comes
other
out
precious metals.
cyclically that you should buy or you should sell,
Yes.
or silver or
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You hear these things, and if you live as long as I have so far, that you see and hear it, and it comes back from 20, 30 years ago.
Everything
And
old is new
the only
again.
thing I found out is put money away and have a plan.
Yeah, put it
And-
away, have a plan. You see on the chart that, depending on what asset class you look at, sometimes it's the best performing fund or category, sometimes it's at the bottom. And it moves. Every one of these asset categories takes turns being at the top and at the bottom. The only one that's kind of consistent is the one that's titled Asset Allocated Portfolio. That's always somewhere right near the middle.
Right.
It's never going to be at the top, never going to be at the bottom. But it allows you to, again, engineer that return, and you know what the parameters are, how high it can be, how low it can
And
be.
in layman's terms, he's trying to make your plan work for you by that guidance. Because if you don't have that guidance, you have the tunnel vision the wrong way. So you do need somebody to help you.
Yeah, and if you don't know what to expect going into it, the first time the market has a bit of a correction, you're going to
Look at this past
freak out
year.
and paint. Yes.
Yeah, and look at the last couple years with markets booming.
Yes.
And then what do they always do? They go back to the mean. And people don't understand it reverts to the mean. And you have to watch out what that mean is. Is it 4%, 5%, 8%, 9%, whatever asset you're in?
Yep. Yep. And it's been doing that since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't change. The slide that you have now is one of my favorites, and I alluded to it. It says fluctuation is going to happen, but don't panic. And this just goes back over the last 20 years, but you could do this over any time period you wanted. This happens to go from 2000 through 2020.
Yeah.
It shows if you stayed, we're just talking about the S&P 500, so just the stock market. Had you been fully invested in that over that 20-year period, your average return would have been a little better than 6%. If you missed the 10 best days in that 20-year period, your return went from 6 to 2.5. You missed the 20 best days, your return is now 0.08. So it's basically flat. You missed the 30 best, your return goes negative, 40, 50. The idea here is you can't possibly know when to be out of the market and when to be back in. But I hear it every time the market is volatile. Someone inevitably says, can't I just get out and then get back in once the dust settles, right? By the time the dust settles, you will have missed it.
And you're so spot on. What people don't realize is the stock market looks to the future. Bad is here today, and worse could be today, but it's looking ahead of time with what the stats come in, the companies come in. Look at earnings. How many big companies have you seen bad earnings, and a couple years they come back? Look, if you're in certain stocks that pay dividends, what kind of income you can get over a 20-year period.
Absolutely.
And the stock price might have varied from being double to triple to down 30, 40%. So how do you know how to time it? And your thing is so perfect, but people don't see or understand that.
They don't. And you said it exactly correct. We call the market a leading indicator. You know, that's which basically means exactly what Al just said. It is a forward-looking mechanism. So we understand what's happening today, and today hurts. The market is on typically about 6 months ahead of where we are in the economy.
In general, depends on, look, we had COVID and everything else.
Correct.
Look, we had transportation costs go up. And that funny thing called oil, look at what happened there. I go back to 73 with the original oil crisis.
Sure.
And people go, wow, oil's so expensive. I go, imagine we had lines for gas when they quintupled the price of oil. It went from 3 to like $12. So it was like quadruple.
Yeah.
And you know, just being a history guy and knowing that, living through it, I go, what if that happened now? You'd have $20 gas.
Yeah.
So what are you complaining about now? Right? So your assets and things like that, the timing, there isn't good timing for the average person.
There really isn't. And it really is like you could see these in advance, because the very next slide is just a slide on but many of the things or reasons that we could point to and say, this year wouldn't have been a good year to invest because this happened. And it goes back all the way to 1986. And year by year, you can look and you can see, in 1990, we had the Persian Gulf War. And,
Right.
I'm just picking out other years. In 1999, you remember Y2K? Everything was going to go kerplooey because of Y2K, and computers weren't going to turn on, planes were going to fall from the sky, but yet the market moved on. And again, you can see it,
Well,
2000
common sense must take over with some of these things. And the irrational thoughts, you got to take it out of your financial plan. Again, in my opinion, and you
Yes.
may co-sign it,
Yes.
that you need to be safe and steady. And guess what? It is your money, and believe it or not, you're trying to make more.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
you're allowed to.
that's right. And again, we can point to all of these years. I mean, we could have taken this chart back to the 1930s and looked year by year.
Go to the Depression,
Absolutely.
1929.
Bad. You could say, hey, we wouldn't have wanted to invest it in that year because this. But in every single instance, the market marched higher. And it will do it again. One of my favorite things that I hear from people is, yeah, I get all that, but this time it's different. And my response is, no, it isn't. It comes wrapped in different packaging, but it's not different, right? The circumstances are different, yes, but how the market will react to that is not different.
Well, being history, look at tulips had a tremendous value in the 1500s. And guess what? That bubble burst.
Yep.
Tell me a bubble and a thought process where you could make even more money that didn't burst.
Yes.
And that's why it's so great. I'm honored to be a special
Yeah.
host on the show, because you could see it's sort of like my wheelhouse.
It is.
And,
yeah.
I appreciate what you're talking about, and I hope you follow through with what Mike's talking about, because it makes true dollars and cents.
Yeah, it really is as easy as just doing it. I mean, we think of 1,000 other things that we need to do during the day, but if you take truly a couple of hours to plan your financial future, it will pay dividends for
Here,
years
I'll
to come.
simplify it.
Go ahead.
You brush your teeth every day. Put some money away every day.
There you go.
How am I
love it.
doing?
I love it. It's perfect. I'm going to steal it.
You can have it.
Good.
I have no fee on it. Any lines that I give,
You heard it here.
you can
folks.
have it first. That's how simple it is.
It really is. Put it away, plan for your future, do it now, don't put it off. Eventually, you are going to get to a point where you say, well, now I need to start living, because while we're working, we're living on the income that we generate.
Yeah.
But there's going to come a point in time you say, hey, and that's the scariest thing for most folks, at least what I hear from folks who are about to retire, is I'm giving up my ability to earn an income, and now I have to rely on what I've put away. There are lots of factors that we have to consider, our age, inflation,
Health.
health, longevity, how long are we going to live, taxes, the market. We need to consider all of those things, and without a plan, how in the world are we ever going to know whether or not we've got what we need? I just want to remind folks, as you can see now, let's look back at our buckets, right? We have our after-tax, our pre-tax, and potentially tax-free. And I say potentially just because with a Roth IRA, you can't just put the money in today and take it out tax-free tomorrow. There's a time limit. It's got to
Yes.
be there for
You
5
need an
years,
age of
et
like
cetera.
59 and a half.
And you've got to be at least 59 and a half before you can take any of that retirement money.
And I didn't see this script.
And you did not. You did not. But that's right. So just understand, if you have all three of those buckets, now you've got the ability to make good, smart financial decisions when you're drawing that out. I'll wrap up by talking a little bit about, because I mentioned it earlier, when you are building your own, your portfolio, there are literally tens of thousands of mutual funds that are out there, which is what most folks are utilizing. How you screen those to determine which one is right for you, there are lots of different approaches that you can take, but you need to at least look at things like how long has the fund been around? What is it? What is the category? Is it a large company, small company, international, et cetera? What about performance? What about risk? What about the manager of the fund? Has he or she been there for a month or for 10 years? Those kinds of things make a difference and are some things that you ought to be considering when you're putting together a portfolio. And then I'll end with this. It's all about starting with your goals. What are the goals? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? From there, you need to analyze where you are. Then you have to create a plan that's going to help you reach your goals. And up to that point, you've done a lot of good stuff, but if you don't do the next thing, which is implement that plan, start doing it, then you have to monitor and adjust it as needed, and then you have to do what you're doing here today and continue to educate yourself. And if you're lucky enough to do it with someone like Al, all the better. So Al, thank you so much for your contribution and your hosting skills today.
You're so welcome, and I appreciate you very much, and all of you must listen to what Mike Fertig talked about.
Thanks, Al.